Very simple and short video for today on this Monday, beginning of the new week and also beginning of the week that brings us to the release of patch 11.1. What we have for today to release is the spreadsheet of the DPS simulations for the upcoming patch. They are at this point close enough to be ready that we can start releasing them, because of course there are still a few of these results missing, a few of the simulations, a few of the APLs being built for each of the specs rotations in the upcoming patch are missing, but we can start having the complete picture on how the current situation is looking like. Now, these sims are done for single target, but they can have multiple uses. The multiple uses you can have isn't just to look at how much damage is your spec doing. There are some cool uses. Use number one is, of course, is to know who is benefiting the most from power infusion. Because unfortunately, in the year of the Lord 2025, Power Infusion is still a spell that can still be given to other players, which means it is relevant for you to know who can get buffed the most from Power Infusion. Not just from Power Infusion itself, but also whether or not the Power Infusion is being given to you by a Shadow Priest, meaning on the Shadow Priest's own timings, so every 2 minutes, or by a healer, by a Priest healer, meaning that it can follow your own cooldown timing. If they are, for example, 90 seconds or 3 minutes, you can save the PI for your CDs, for example, and then of course how much it is in the actual burst window of the Power Infusion, in the first 40-ish seconds of all of your cooldowns and bloodlust and whatnot, to see who benefits the most there. And then you have, of course, the other point where it is helpful to know the supposed damage of the specs before the patch is even out, which is the tier sets, because of the, the distribution of the tier sets for a raiding guild could be more precise if you knew who benefits the most from what tier set. So first of all, for starters, this is what we have when it comes to the single target to results right now. We have left a filter here to order just so you get to see who is doing most. Okay, it's Arms Warrior. This used to be even higher than before. It used to be well above 3 million, 3.1 million even. It has been nerfed recently because of this. Same treatment pretty much was also given to Fury. So those were performing very, very well. And then even after the nerf, as you can see, they are still doing just fine. Enhancement was also nerfed multiple times, and now they are still doing extremely, extremely well. Windwalker is perhaps the most surprising in here. It's not that you often see Windwalker, traditionally, you don't think about a Windwalker being a powerhouse of single target damage, but right now they are doing quite well, as well as Frost Decay, which has also been nerfed recently, and then it had to be buffed because their performance went down a bit. Now, we've also kept, whenever they are available, some of the other hero talents being played. Most of these is on whether or not the hero talent, first of all, it's done and complete in the APL and actually works, and then number two, also if it is even somewhat relatively close to their counterpart. For example, the very recent discovery that Flame Shaper is apparently out-damaging Scale Commander, but Scale Commander is still doing, extremely high competitive damage together next to Flame Shaper, so it's still worthwhile pointing them out together, whereas others are still missing. Now, as a sliver of copium, especially for the supposedly right now underperforming specs, at least Sims wise, there is the cope that most of the bosses, at the very least for now, all of the 7 testable bosses in the PTR had basically 0 windows of pure single target. So there was always some room, or in some cases massive room, for your spec to benefit from hitting 2 targets, 3 targets very often in the testing of the bosses. So it's not that this is going to be the only thing you will be doing in the raid. Of course, you're still more valuable if you have higher single target to focus, to pump damage in single target, but it's more than likely, it's very possible to see specs doing not nearly as well on a single target. For example, Balance Druid to be much more powerful in the raid because of the benefit they might be getting from, for example, multi-dotting, from Starfall, from free damage on a bunch of ads, for example, or powerful cleave damage or even funnel damage in the case of subtlety. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at the results in single target. And then the next powerful thing you can look at is the PI. We have the divisions of PI on your cooldowns or the PI every 2 minutes as if you were playing with a Shadow Priest. It is likely you will be playing with both. You will certainly be playing with Healing Priests, so your ideal PI will be there, and it's also possible you will be playing with Shadow Priests as well this tier. So specifically talking about the DPS gain purely on your cooldowns, so not every, for example, 2 minutes, which in some cases can be the exact same thing. In some cases, it will have very similar to equal results because your cooldowns were already 2 minutes. So your PI, whether it was a Shadow Priest or whether it was a Healing Priest, was still coming every 2 minutes anyways. But in the ideal scenario, the highest benefit, the highest gain goes to Marksmanship Hunter, followed by Affliction, Unholy, Fire Mage, and Demo Warlock. And then again, more Hunters. So actually, so far, looks like the ideal targets of PI are the Warlocks and Hunters, with the odd Unholy DK and Fire Mage right there. Those seems to be the highest gains right now when it comes to an entire fight. So in this case, a 5-minute fight would be a 0-4 with 3 different power infusions over the course of the fight, and these are the specs benefiting the most. As mentioned, when you look at the PI every 2 minutes rather than PI on your cooldowns, it's still, again, very similar results. They lose some numbers, you see, from 8.6 to 8.3, from 5.2 to 4.8, but the specs pretty much remain the same in terms of the power gain you have from power infusion. Now, this might be more relevant when you look at the DPS gain specifically within the power infusion window. Just how much damage can they get during that window? For example, throughout the course of the fight, 3 power infusions throughout the course of the fight is 130,000 DPS gain for Demo, but within the very single window of the PI, it is over 400,000 DPS in the case of Demo, as well as in the case of Unholy. So these are the actual gains you will be getting inside of the PI, again, for these very same specs. The Hunters, the Warlocks, and then Unholy and Fire Mage as well. So these are the generic money targets you would like to hit with power infusions in the upcoming season. At least all of these, of course, were done with single target power infusions. There might be differences, obviously, in AoE. The other thing that can, of course, be a good addition to your results, not just a single target results flat out, but also how much you're gaining exactly from your tier sets. Again, to see how much of a powerful jump you are going to get from going from 0 pieces to 2 pieces, and then from 2 pieces to 4 pieces, but also then the just general final result of actually getting your new tier set from basically from 0, from nothing, from scratch. So starting on a slow note, on a slow and low note, you have the winners of going from 0 to 2 piece, which is Beast Mastery Hunter, followed by Arcane Mage. This is a problem because of the other thing we have added here, which is the tier token. Because, at the very least, not only do you care about who gains the most in the tier set, but also how can you split the tier tokens for each of the Mystic, Venerated, Zenith, and Dreadful tier tokens you will be looting. So in this case, it's kind of bad that 2 of the specs that gain the most from the 2-piece are Mystic. In fact, actually, 3 out of the 4 specs that gain the most from their 2-piece are all Mystic. So there's going to be a lot of value in the Mystic tier token for the DPS specs for going from 0 to 2 pieces in terms of value. Then, to actually complete your 4-piece, going from 2 to 4, the gain bonus now is for Demo, Frost, Fire, Subtlety, and again BM. This is something we have seen in the tuning, in the tier tuning. We had quite a few, actually 3 or 4 tier sets that were above the total gain of 30% more damage given just by the tier set. Now, these have been nerfed, so the total numbers going from no pieces, so you just went into your Mythic plus farm, you got a bunch of 655 item level pieces, you replaced your current tier set, now you have no more pieces, you're going to get your 4-piece set bonus, and these are the results. So BM used to be well above 30%. You also had the recently nerfed Shadow, which went from 32 to 12, and even the recently nerfed Subtlety, which is still at 14% and one of the stronger ones. But for now, let's just say the powerful ones, the ones going above 10% damage, are the the valuable tier sets right now would be in this category. So you have, even here, again, an overloaded number of Mystic tier tokens. Again, BM, Fire, Arcane, and Balanced Druid, all from the Mystic, and well, a couple of Dreadfuls, Demonology, and Frost Decay. A single, for now at least, with missing the Sims for Assassination, there is one single Zenith tier token be worth giving to Sub-Rogue. So Sub-Rogue is pretty cool right now. If you go in the raid, you are on a very high priority to be able to be given all of your Zenith tier tokens first, because nobody else gets as much bonus or as much benefit as you do as a spec. So this is something that can also help you, plan ahead of who is going to be given these tier pieces first compared to others, right? For example, if you lived in a world where you are playing with a BM and you are playing with a Frost Mage, right? I'm sorry, but the 4-piece of the Frost Mage is 150k DPS increase. The 4-piece of a BM Hunter is 500,000. So of course you have to, even if you had 3 Frost Mages in your guild, in your raid, giving all 4 pieces to the BM Hunter would actually be more DPS gain for your guild than giving 2 different 2 pieces, or even more, 4 different 4 pieces to all 4 mages, and the BM Hunter would still be gaining more damage from the tier set bonus. That is something that can help you, plan ahead and know who has the value right now put into their tier set. Because this is relevant, of course, because the value of the single target damage is not always or often tied to the power of the spec. We just mentioned here BM Hunter gaining 500,000 DPS, massive damage from their tier set. Sure, but it's not that BM Hunter is the highest damage dealing right now. So this is in reverse. It means that when you have no tier set, you are going to be much weaker than the other specs because you gain so much more from your tier set, right? If you go to for example, the 0 pieces DPS simulations, BM Hunter is not having a good time. We just mentioned, for example, Frost Mage not being worth given their tier set. The reason why they're not worth is because their base damage is already very high. So even though, sure, their tier set is weak, their tier set in this case is weak because their base power was already very high. The same can be said for Warriors. It's not bad to hear that Warrior has a pathetic 3.2% DPS gain from getting a new tier set as Fury. That's because your base damage is already super high. So your tier set is quite weak in return. So not always and not often having a super powerful tier set is very, very relevant. In fact, it can hurt you more often than not, because if you get it late, if you have to wait to get that tier set, it means you have to wait on getting your full power for the season. But as mentioned, with the Catalyst, the free tier token, the multi tokens, the Omni tokens you get from the last boss, being able to quickly get to 4 pieces shouldn't be too hard for at least organized enough guilds. So this is what we had to compile for today and release to the public, the simulations, when it comes to the single target sims, the PI sims, the burst window of PI, as well as the tier set gains for all of the specs. So this is what we have on this Monday. Let's try to keep it short for today. We are now leaving each other to our tomorrow, which it's probably time for some tier lists as the patch is about to come out. But for today, we are now leaving each other. We are starting the goodbyes as usual by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who's been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I like it when you just casually bob your head left and right and your camera is just playing along.